Okay? So,
Yeah, ready.
before we read the last para, we have to be a little specific about the two terms, Vedism and Vedantism.
Okay.
So, Vedism, because the Gita criticizes the people who use the Vedic mantras for the wrong reason. Okay, so that's why this discussion is there in this chapter. So Vedism is the use of Vedic mantras for only physical aims and physical motives. Okay? I want wealth, I want success, I want women. So Vedism, the mantras are used for only that purpose. Success in the physical world. So Vedism refers to that. But Vedantism refers to the use of the Vedas for knowledge. So that's why you have the Karma Kanda and the Uttara Kanda, okay, or Jnana Kanda. Uttara Mimamsa and Purva Mimamsa. But that's a philosophical distinction. So this problem is there in the way they use the Vedas. So now how the Gita solves the problem. Okay. So I am reading the text. The Gita resolves this opposition by insisting that the Devas are only forms of the one Deva, the Ishvara, the Lord of all yoga and worship and sacrifice and austerity. And if it is true that sacrifice offered to the Devas leads only to material results and to paradise, it is also true that sacrifice offered to the Ishvara leads beyond them to the great liberation. For the Lord and the immutable Brahman are not two different beings, but one and the same being, who and whoever strives towards either is striving towards that one divine existence. All works in their totality find their culmination and completeness in the knowledge of the divine. Sarvam karmakhilam partha jnane parisamapyate. All works end in knowledge. That's the meaning. They are not an obstacle, but the way to the supreme knowledge. Thus, this opposition too is reconciled with the help of a large elucidation of the meaning of sacrifice. What is meant by sacrifice? With the help of a large elucidation of the meaning of sacrifice. In fact, its conflict is only a restricted form of the larger opposition between yoga and Sankhya. Vedism is a specialized and narrow form of yoga. The principle of the Vedantists is identical with that of the Sankhyas, for to both the movement of salvation is a recoil of the intelligence, the buddhi, from the differentiating powers of nature. Differentiating powers of nature from ego, mind, senses, from the subjective and the objective, and its return to the undifferentiated and the immutable. It is with this object of reconciliation in his mind that the teacher first approaches his statement of the doctrine of sacrifice. But throughout, even from the very beginning, he keeps his eye not on the restricted Vedic sense of sacrifice and works, but on their larger and universal application. That widening of narrow and formal notions to admit the great general truths they unduly restrict, which is always the method of the Gita. So, what is being said here is that sacrifice can be made to the gods who are lesser than the Ishvara and the Purushottama. Okay? And the sacrifice, when it is made without egoism, without motive, only for the divine, that takes you to the third level. The second level is what the Vedism is aiming at. But the Vedantism aims at the third level. Okay? That's basically what he's saying.
Hmm.
Sacrifice is common to both. Even for those who want success in the physical world, they sacrifice to a certain extent. Like if you go to a temple or a church and make a donation, you are making a sacrifice, but it's with an intention. Okay.
Ah,
So, whereas the yogi is making sacrifice not necessarily of money, but of his own works, his own nature, everything he does is for the divine. That sacrifice will take you to the third level, the Ishvara, the Purushottam. That is how, so Gita is saying, sacrifice is sacrifice, whether it is made to the gods or to the Supreme. So now we are going to have a discussion on the sacrifice. What is meant by sacrifice, in how many ways it can be done, and the discussion. So it's quite the significance of sacrifice. Then the next chapter is the Lord of the sacrifice. Then the principle of divine work. So only 2 chapters here. But if you remember, the concept of sacrifice is discussed in the synthesis of yoga in 80 pages. 80. Okay. So there are a lot of discussion there about the sacrifice. So here it's much less because the stress is on the Gita and not the sacrifice. There in the synthesis of yoga, the sacrifice is whatever you are doing, you do it for the Lord. And so there is a big explanation about sacrifice. It's not the physical sacrifice by lighting an oven, lighting an agni and pouring ghee and chanting mantras, but it's a sacrifice of your own nature, your own actions, your own thoughts, and your own feelings. Everything is
how synonymous is sacrifice with aspiration?
Yes, that's right. So we can start reading the next chapter.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Where's the recording going on?
The significance of sacrifice.
Yeah, the significance of sacrifice. So I'm reading the first para, which is about a page. The Gita's theory of sacrifice is stated in 2 separate passages. One we find in the 3rd chapter, another in the 4th. The first gives it in language which might, taken by itself, seem to be speaking only of the ceremonial sacrifice. The second, interpreting that into the sense of a large philosophical symbolism, transforms at once its whole significance and raises it to a plane of high psychological and spiritual truth. With sacrifice, the Lord of creatures of old created creatures and said, by this shall you bring forth fruits or offspring, let this be your milker of desires. Foster by this the gods, and let the gods foster you. Fostering each other, you shall attain to the supreme good. Fostered by sacrifice, the gods shall give you desired enjoyments. Who enjoys their given enjoyments and has not given to them, he is a thief. The good who eat what is left from the sacrifice are released from all sin. But evil are they and enjoy sin who cook the food for their own sake. From food, creatures come into being. From rain is the birth of food. From sacrifice comes into being rain. Sacrifice is born of work. Work know to be born of Brahman. Brahman is born of the immutable. Therefore, is the all-pervading Brahman established in the sacrifice. He who follows not here the wheel thus set in motion, in movement, Evil is his being, sensual is his delight. In vain, O Partha, that man lives. Having thus stated the necessity of sacrifice, we shall see hereafter in what sense we may understand a passage which seems at first sight to convey only a traditional theory of ritualism and the necessity of the ceremonial offering. Krishna proceeds to state the superiority of the spiritual man to works. But the man whose delight is in the self and who is satisfied with the enjoyment of the self and in the self he is content, for him there exists no work that needs to be done. He has no object here to be gained by action done and none to be gained by action undone. He has no dependence on all these existences for any object to be gained. That completes the paragraph. So, the Gita's theory of sacrifice is stated in two separate passages. The one we find in the 3rd chapter, another in the 4th. The first gives it in language which might, taken by itself, seem to be speaking only of the ceremonial sacrifice. The normal sacrifice as people understand, yajna. The word sacrifice in English is not a very good translation of the yajna. Yajna has got two meanings. One is, you build a fire, you build an altar actually. That also is done with mantric effect and with a concentrated condition of consciousness. And then you build a altar and you make a small place where you put a fire. You put the fuel and the fire is lit, and in that fire you go on adding whatever you want to sacrifice. Okay. Normally also ghee is added so that the fire of sacrifice is kept going for the whole period of the mantric recitation. Okay. So that is the first one. So in the 3rd chapter, the language used suggests that the Gita is telling you to make sacrifices. Okay. Actually, it's not like that. The sacrifice is a symbolic sacrifice, and that is spoken of very clearly in the 4th. That's what he said. Okay. So, and what is the sacrifice? He is quoting now from the Gita. With sacrifice, the Lord of creatures of old created creatures and said, by this shall you bring forth fruits or offerings. Let this be your milker of desires. So, when the divine is sacrificing, what is he sacrificing? That is very much clearly given in the Sriramda's book, The Mother. Okay? When the Lord is manifesting himself, he is sacrificing his knowledge, his power, his ananda, and also his will and his power. He is sacrificing because it becomes less, if you remember. Manifestation implies forms, and forms imply limitation. So his power is limiting and making the manifestation possible.
But it is an intentional sacrifice.
Yes, that's right. So, but because he wants to create the manifestation.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to create the world. So he reduces his own power, reduces his own consciousness, and that's a sacrifice. So in the Mother, Sriramda says very clearly, this is the sacrifice of the Purusha. But in a much deeper sense, he says, it is the holocaust of the Prakriti. It's a divine mother who sacrifices herself. Because the Purusha remains on top. Okay? But it is the divine mother who comes down and becomes mechanical energy, nature. She becomes nature. So really it applies more to the divine mother. That's what he says. So the principle of sacrifice is, just as the Lord has sacrificed, you also as a human being wanting to go back to where you came from, you have to also sacrifice. What do you sacrifice? You can sacrifice materially, you can sacrifice your property, you can offer it to the divine. You can offer your money to the divine. You can also, in a subtler way, offer your actions to the divine. You can also sacrifice your knowledge. Whatever you are doing, you do it for the Lord. That's the sacrifice. The meaning of sacrifice in the Gita, it is symbolic. Okay, that's what it's saying. And if you don't sacrifice, then you are a thief. Because when you want something, you have to give something. And if you want to only take and not give, then you are a thief by definition. Okay. When you go into a shop, you want to buy something, you part with money. That's the sacrifice you're making. But if you don't part with money and only take what you want, you are a thief. So spiritually also, you are a thief. Okay. That's what it meant. You have to give something to the divine to receive. Okay. So that's it.
So when he mentions the good who eat, what is left from the sacrifice
Yes.
are released from all sin.
Yeah. The good who eat what is left. So you offer whatever you have, you offer, and what is left, you take. Okay. So that is the meaning of the word sacrifice, yajna, in the Gita. If you don't do that, you are a thief and your life is worthless. Okay. In vain, O Partha, that man lives. His life has no meaning. That's what he says. Now we can go to the next para if you want.
Yes.
Okay. So, I'm reading the next para. Here then are two ideals, Vedist and Vedantist, okay? Standing as if in all their sharp original separation and opposition. On one side, the active ideal of acquiring enjoyments here and the highest good beyond by sacrifice. Here is the first one. The ideal is to acquire enjoyments here in the physical world and the highest good beyond by sacrifice. Even after you die, you want the best in the other worlds. And the mutual dependence of the human being and the divine powers. And on the other, facing it, the austerer ideal of the liberated man who, independent in the spirit, has nothing to do with enjoyment or works or the human or divine worlds, but exists only in the peace of the Supreme Self, joys only in the calm joy of the Brahman. He is not wanting any material benefit. The next verses create a ground for the reconciliation between the two extremes. The secret is not inaction as soon as one turns towards the higher truth, but the desireless action, both before and after it is reached. Before you have reached the goal of your life realization, you have to do desireless action. And after you have reached also, you continue to desireless action because you work for the divine. The liberated man has nothing to gain by action, but nothing also to gain by inaction. And it is not at all for any personal object that he has to make his choice. Therefore, without attachment, perform ever the work that is to be done for the sake of the word, loka sangraham, okay. Sangraha, as is made clear immediately after. For by doing work without attachment, man attains to the highest. For it was even by works that Janaka and the rest attained to perfection. It is true that works and sacrifice are a means of arriving at the highest good, Shreya Param Avapsyatha. But there are three kinds of works: that done without sacrifice for personal enjoyment, which is entirely selfish and egoistic, and misses the true law and aim and utility of life. Moham Partha Sajivati. That done with sacrifice, the second one, that done with sacrifice but with sacrifice, and the enjoyment only as a result of sacrifice, and therefore to that extent consecrated and sanctified, and that done without desire or attachment of any kind. It is the last which brings the soul of man to the highest. Param apnoti purusha. So,
I have a few questions,
yeah, go ahead.
especially with the relevance to working for the world.
Yeah,
If one can work for the world
yeah,
as an offering, total offering to the divine,
yeah.
then what happens when the negative or adverse forces try to destroy that work?
Oh, but once you have gone to the supreme level where you are only doing the work that is being told to you by the supreme, that work the divine knows that that work will not be hampered. Okay, so and so long, and the hampering of the evil powers, hostile powers, comes when you are impure. When you have purified yourself fully, the hostile powers have no influence on you. They have no influence on you. The hostile powers feed on imperfections. And when you are imperfect, they can stop you. They use your imperfections to stop you and obstruct you. But when you are absolutely pure, they have no hold on you at all.
Thank you.
So that's what is being said here in this paragraph. Okay? So if this is clear, the three types of works, we can discuss the three types of works. Okay.
Okay.
The first one is you are doing work for your own selfish aims. Okay. That's a normal attitude of man. Okay. I am doing a job so that I get money, so that I can make myself comfortable. I want to build a house, I want to build a family, and I need money, so I'm working. Okay. And that work can be anything, doesn't matter. This is the first. So when you do that, then you are not having a spiritual life and you are a thief. Okay. But you can also ask the divine for certain things, but also make a sacrifice to him. Okay. This is like in all trade, you give and you take. Okay. So if you take without giving, then you are a thief. But if you are giving and taking, okay, then it is a higher level because you are not a thief anymore. But still, your aim and your motives are all selfish. Okay, they are based on your own, and the divine may give you what you want. Okay, if it is done in the right spirit and in the sacrificial way, it is done. But here again, there is an interesting question. The divine will give you what you want, but there are consequences to what you are asking. I think I told you once that there's a very beautiful movie, a Hollywood movie called Bedazzled, okay, in which this man is tired of his job and he wants to change his job, something new. So he is wondering what he can do, and suddenly a beautiful lady comes and sits by his side, okay, and tells him, "You want a change? I can give you the change." Okay, I'm not being very accurate with the story, but anyway. So he says, "Oh, you can do that." Okay, yes, I can do that. Whenever you want something, you call me. Then she says, "But I don't have your phone number." So she says, "You don't need a phone number." She gives a visiting card which says only the devil. And says, "Whenever you want, you just call me. Think of me and I will come." So he says, "Oh, that's interesting." So they make a contract. Okay. And the contract is a large book, many conditions and many subsections detailing many conditions. So first, he says you will get 7 wishes. Your 7 wishes will come true. So he starts thinking of that. He says, he thinks of her and she comes. He says, "I want wealth." Okay. Immediately, he finds himself in Colombia as a drug dealer. So this is a consequence that will come to you. So Then he is chased by the thieves for his wealth. He is chased by internal gang wars. He is also pursued by the tax collectors. So this is enough for me. I don't want this. So he asks her again to come and he cancels that. So he has lost two wishes already. Then the third one also he wishes, and there also there are problems. Okay. So every time you wish something at the second level, okay, for yourself, there are consequences. You may get what you want, but there are consequences. And you have to work your way through all those sufferings. The third type of sacrifice is you ask for nothing at all. So, and in the story, okay, let me finish the story. The last wish that he has, he said, I want to cancel my contract with you. Okay, because every wish that I'm making is giving me problems. I'm getting what I want, but I'm having problems. So I want the gifts, but I don't want the problems. So she says, but that's not possible. The contract says that this is what will happen. So he cancels the contract. So that's a story. And it's very, very apt here because that's exactly what happens.
Yes.
In the physical world, suppose I want something, okay, there are always forces that come with these things. Very easy to understand, okay. I take a drop of honey and I put it on my dining table. One drop of honey. In 15 minutes, you will see the ants are coming. Okay. I am fishing in the sea. Okay. I am fishing in the sea. And I am in a trawler and I am going. And you have caught many fish. Immediately your trawler will be followed by birds which are wanting these. You will see this very often. When a trawler is fishing in the sea, you will see birds flying behind them. So everything attracts this type of thing. Now, suppose you have wealth. It attracts people who want loans from you. It attracts thieves. It also attracts the tax collectors. So this is the problem. You will get what you want, but there will be conditions and things attached to it. So the third one is the spiritual sacrifice. You ask for nothing at all, and you only give what you have. Okay? So that's the third one. And that will take you to the Lord of Sacrifice, the Ishvara. That's it. Three types of sacrifices being discussed here in this para. Okay, so we have time for one more para.
Yes.
So we'll read that para and see what it says. Okay, so now the Vedic works, what is being said. The whole sense and drift of this teaching turns upon the interpretation we are to give to the important words yajna, karma, and brahma. Yajna is sacrifice, karma is work, and brahma is the Brahman consciousness. If the sacrifice is simply the Vedic sacrifice, if the work from which it is born is the Vedic rule of works, and if the Brahman from which the work itself is born is the Shabda Brahman, in the sense only of the letter of the Veda, then all the positions of the Vedist dogma are considered and there is nothing more. Ceremonial sacrifice is the right means of gaining children, wealth, enjoyment. That's the second type of offering. You are not a thief, you make an offering and then you expect something, you will get the right means of gaining children, wealth, or enjoyment. The material success in the physical world. By ceremonial sacrifice, rain is brought down from heaven and the prosperity and continuity of the race assured. Life is a continual transaction between the gods and men, in which man offers ceremonial gifts to the gods from the gifts they have bestowed on him, and in return is enriched, protected, and fostered. Therefore, all human works have to be accompanied and turned into a sacrament by ceremonial sacrifice and a ritualistic worship. Work not so dedicated is accursed. Enjoyment without previous ceremonial sacrifice and ritual consecration is a sin. Even salvation, even the highest good, is to be gained by ceremonial sacrifice. It must never be abandoned. Even the seeker of liberation has to continue to do ceremonial sacrifice, although without attachment. It is by ceremonial sacrifice and ritualistic works done without attachment that men of the type of Janaka attain to spiritual perfection and liberation. By the way, this whole paragraph is the Gita's. It is not Sri Aurobindo view, because you don't need to do ceremonial sacrifice at all. You can do only the spiritual sacrifice in the third level. You don't need to sit and start offering ghee into a fire to get what you want. You give yourself, your actions. So this is the, very clearly, it is not Sri Aurobindo's viewpoint, but it's a Gita saying that this has to be done. Okay. Later on, the Gita also will obviously, this is how it is interpreted. So if you read the first sentence of the next para, you can see that even the Gita did not mean that. It is being interpreted in this way. Okay. Note also interestingly that the first sentence of what we just now read is the whole sense and drift of this teaching, the Vedist teaching. So it's not the Gita's interpretation at all. And the first sentence of the last para, the next para, is obviously this cannot be the meaning of the Gita. So very clearly what he's saying here, and this is something very common in humankind. Nah? It's there in India, it is there also in the West. Okay. So very wealthy people, they give money, they have charity. So that's the sacrifice they are making. So it is valid. You will get what you want and you have to do charity. Okay. Or you give charity, you give money to the politicians, or you give to the church, or you give to other to get what you want. And you get what you want. The second type. But the third type is a spiritual sacrifice, and that is what the Gita insists on. Okay. We can also say that the Gita has already warned you that you have to interpret the words yajna, karma, and brahma in the correct way. Yajna is the offering of oneself fully to the divine. The karma includes all work, not only the work of pouring ghee into fire, not that. Every work that you do can be offered to the divine first. Okay? So, whether your mental studies or your vital actions or even your physical actions, whatever you are doing, you offer it to the divine. That is the meaning to be given. So then you will get the full benefit. You will get the benefit at the second type of sacrifice also, as we discussed. But there will be conditions. And the third one, you will get what you want, but it's the most difficult one to do. You have to offer everything yourself fully. If you remember, in the prayers and meditations, Mother in her own handwriting, there is a very interesting preface there. She says, some give their wealth to the divine, some give their work to the divine, okay? But the one who gives oneself fully in every sense, that is the one who will get the success. So, next
But
time.
she also says others, no matter what they give.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that about the others, no matter what they give, are useless for the divine purpose? Is that what she says?
Yes. For instance, there was a man who came and offered a lakh of rupees. I'm talking 50 years ago, and 50 years ago, a lakh of rupees was a large amount. Okay, and he wanted a boarding to be built by that, but he also put he said, my name should be there on the nameplate. Okay, So this is a motivated thing. Okay, this is not a proper sacrifice at all. This is the first thing. The second thing was that somebody offers 1 lakh rupees to mother with a condition: do this, do that. But a poor man will offer 50 paisa to the mother, okay, without any demand. That is 10 times more valuable than the lack of 1 lakh of offering. So it depends on the attitude with which you have given the money. Okay, so
I remember the story about the mailman.
about
The mailman who was able to give only 1 rupee a month.
yeah.
And he would give it every month, and then one month he didn't give it, and mother sent her secretaries out to find out if this man was all right.
Yeah. It also depends on what you are doing. Suppose you have 10 rupees with you and you give 5 rupees back to the divine. You are giving only half of yourself. But the one who gives the full, the human being normally will say, if I give away the whole thing, what will I do? I'll need. But if he has faith, he will know that the divine will give you much more than what you have given him. So that is a very difficult thing to do. Okay? There are 2 instances of that. Okay? One is the Sri Ramdas coming out to Pondicherry without any money at all. He was asked to go to Chandanagar and Pondicherry. He did that. Absolutely, he offered his obedience fully to the divine. The other is a striking case of Raman Maharshi. Okay, at the age of 16, he offered everything he had and he ran away, knowing fully well that the divine will look after him. Even a little bit of money that he had, he gave it away to a beggar, and even his clothes he threw off. Physically, even he threw off his clothes. So that is the true sacrifice in it should be done in that way. Not easy, but that's a true sacrifice. Next time we will read. Obviously, this cannot be the meaning of the Gita.